Hi everyone, MARKCHES here. Welcome to the channel. For today, I'll be comparing two of the sneakers from the Greater Than series or the GT series. So let's go. Right in front of me is the GT Run on my right, and on my left is the GT Cut. So the GT Cut was first released and the GT Runs was recently released. So let's compare the two of them. I know a lot of you have been asking me or curious about the main difference between the two, aside from the name, the Cut and the Run. And I will explain that thoroughly on why they are called those sneakers. So let's start off first with the uppers of these two sneakers. Of course, on the GT Cut, it features this net-like mesh upper that comparing to the upper of the Runs, which is also made out of mesh, but this is screen mesh, and this is the screen mesh, but this is the heavily fused one compared to the net mesh on the GT Cut. So this is like a very soft thread that you can find on the outer layer of the GT Cut because it's dual layer, while on the GT Run it is just one layer, and this one layer is heavily fused from the forefoot to the heel. It is mainly because it's just one layer, so they need to fuse it up really hard so that there'll be support in the sneaker. And comparing it with the upper of the GT Cut, that's why they added an extra layer. It's because to give extra durability to the upper of the sneaker. And you can see on some areas of the GT Cut, it is heavily fused, like here around the forefoot part on the lateral side of the sneaker. You can see it's really fused around this part and even on the medial side. So the high wear areas are heavily fused or there's fuse, while on the areas that doesn't need fusing, like in between the forefoot and the midfoot, it's really soft there. So the main difference between the upper, as for the feel of the uppers, when you first wear it, you will immediately feel the difference in terms of comfort. The GT Cut is way comfortable compared to the upper of the GT Runs. But if you are someone who likes it very minimal, very light on the upper, and more ventilation to the sneaker, of course the GT Run will give you that because of the upper is really thin. Ventilation is really good on the GT Runs. Plus, even though it's just one layer, like I said, it is heavily fused. That's why it's very durable, even though it's just made out of a very thin screen mesh upper. But the only sacrifice that you'll be getting out of the Runs is, of course, the comfort. Especially the first time you wear it, you will really feel the upper really very plasticky and very crunchy. You would feel it crunching while you're moving, but right now, after wearing this and playing with them for a couple of times already, the upper seems to be a lot softer, but the crunchiness is still there because of the fusing mainly. But in terms of the softness, it became a lot softer when I used them. Moving to the mid part of the upper is of course the thong, the lacing system. Both have traditional lacing system, and on the GT Cut, it has different materials. As for the upper, it is double fused around the lace loops of the GT Cut, if you can see that, and even on the middle side. So it's double fused. There's this matte fusing plus this very thin fusing that's like a piping where the laces goes in, while on the GT Runs, it has this very thin TPU that's just soft TPU plastic that's very bendable at the same time, still very durable. As for the lace loops, I think both are very durable. And one major thing, of course, is the laces. On the GT Cut, it has this rounded laces, while on the GT Runs, it has this flat laces. And in my preference, I like flat laces better because it doesn't loosen up quickly when you're playing with the sneaker compared to a rounded laces. Sometimes it loosens up when you play with them for a long time and you need to relace it. So I prefer a flat lace. But in terms of quality, I think more people like the quality of rounded laces because it's more premium. But for me, personal preference in terms of performance, I prefer the flat laces always. Now, of course, the thong part of the two sneakers, where I've been ranting about the thong of the GT Run because of how thin it is, and it has padding, but it doesn't have enough padding in the right places. Let me explain that. It has padding around the front part of the tongue, but the area where it touches you most is around the ankle part. So when you really tighten up the laces around the ankle, like I said in my performance review and other comparison between the GT Run, this is just my only complaint of the GT Run is it's really thin around the top of the ankle. So if you're really tightening your laces, it will kind of cut your skin, or you will feel it around the top of your ankle. So sometimes it will be uncomfortable. But what I did is just be careful in lacing the GT Runs and not really tightening it too much around the ankle part. Then you're good to go. While on the GT Cut is where I wish that they made the tongue of the GT Run similar to the GT Cut, because I don't think it will make the sneaker a lot heavier if they just made this neoprene tongue that they use on the GT Cut and use it on the runs. Because mainly this neoprene-like material on the Cut's tongue is very comfortable. It's still very thin. It's kind of fused or pressed so that it's not too fluffy. And it's really comfortable on top of your skin. So I just wish that they use this material on the runs for the tongue part of the sneaker. So that is just my gripe on the runs. I know that they really want to make the sneaker lighter, but maybe just a 0.005 grams of material around the tongue won't even matter at all. Now let's move on to the back part or heel part of the sneaker. Both are very low, but on the GT Run, you can see it going up higher around the ankle. So this is a mid-low sneaker for the runs, while on the cuts, it's really low around the ankle bone. So this is really truly a low-cut sneaker. And as for the pillows inside, is where you can also feel it immediately. On the cut, you can see how heavily padded the cut is around the heel and ankle part. Especially around the ankles, the cut is heavily padded there. While on the runs, it's really thin, but it has padding on the areas that needs padding. Fortunately, they added padding to where it matters on the runs around the heel or ankle part. So in terms of comfort around the ankle and heel, you will feel more comfortable, of course, for the cut because it has a lot of padding. But in terms of heel containment and lockdown, both have excellent heel containment and lockdown, even though the runs is really thin around the areas, but the Achilles pillows really holds your heel down. And even if I'm not really tightening up the last lace loop of the runs, I wasn't experiencing any heel slippage on the runs. So I would say both have excellent heel containment and lockdown. Now let's move on, of course, to the cushion part of these two sneakers. The runs have a full-length React foam. You can see this white part, this is full-length React. And at the forefoot of the sneaker, it says 4-foot zoom straddle. Yes, this is a 4-foot zoom straddle, not a full-length zoom straddle. Plus below the 4-foot zoom straddle is another zoom unit that is really nice, a very nice setup. So what they made on the GT Runs is they stack the two zoom units and lessen the React foam in between the two zoom units so that you wouldn't sacrifice court feel that much. Although it's not that close to the ground, but at the same time, you're not too high off the ground either. So that's a very nice setup for the runs. While on the GT Cut, of course, it has a full-length zoom straddle plus this React foam insole. So the insole is actually part of the midsole because I'm gonna compare it with the runs insole. This is the Cuts insole, and let's remove the runs insole. So you can see the idea, the main difference between the two insoles, and both are React insoles. You can see this is the runs insole. This is really thin compared to the drop-in insole, midsole of the Cuts. So the main difference between the cushion setup, of course, this has full-length zoom straddle plus this React drop-in. The main difference that you will be feeling is, of course, the cut is really low to the ground. It's very responsive sneaker. Court feel is amazing on the cut. While comparing it to the runs, of course, the runs is a lot thicker. You can see this large chunk of React foam. So the main difference, of course, if you want more cushion, more impact protection, of course, the runs will give you that. But if you want maximum court feel at the same time, you still have good impact protection and maximum responsiveness. Of course, the cuts cushioning setup will be great for you. So a lot of you have been commenting me that I should choose when I'm doing a comparison video, but sometimes guys, it really depends on the situation. It really depends on the day, especially if I play back-to-back days. I would prefer my second day sneaker to have more cushion because it will be friendlier for my knees because I'm in recovery mode. But if I'm just playing one time or it's a real gameplay, like there's a shot clock, I would choose the cut there because it's ultra responsive and I won't be playing for a longer period of time. But if I'm just playing for fun runs, like for 2 to 3 hours, I would prefer more cushion. So for that, I would choose the runs. But for real-time in-game play, I would choose the cut because I will be more responsive and my knees won't be stressed for a long period of time. So I hope you got my explanation on that. Now let's move on to the outsole traction of the sneaker. The GT cut features this very tire-like traction pattern that you can see on the tires of the cars. And on the runs, you can see it like a chain-like pattern. And the main difference between the rubber materials of the two sneakers is on the runs, it's a lot more deeper and it is widely spaced. While on the cuts, you can see it closely knit to each other. So the main advantage on the pattern of the runs is, of course, dust pickup won't be that much of the problem. But in terms of a clean court use, the first time that I used the cut, it was really sticking like glue on the court, like really sticking. The grip was awesome. While on the runs, it wasn't gripping that well. But after playing with this for a long period of time, the rubber material became softer, so it became more pliable when you're playing. So pliable means it's a lot softer now. So it kind of moves on the floor. So the grip improves a lot as you play with them on the runs. Well, on the GT Cut, I still haven't experienced any problems even on dusty floors. It was still gripping very nicely. So for the traction, I would prefer the Cut's traction a little bit better compared to the runs, but the runs traction will become better the more that you use them. Another difference between the outsole is on the runs, you can see it's kind of cut here. So it has a groove here. So it kind of gives you a better heel-to-toe transition. It bends more around the midfoot part on the runs. While on the cuts, it's more bendable now because it doesn't have the drop in midsole. But when you put it, I think it's still very bendable. But on the runs, it has a better heel-to-toe transition because of this one. Kind of gives you that decoupled feel. If you're a player who likes to run up and down the floor a lot, the runs is for you. That's why, hence the name runs, because you're someone who keeps on running. But if you are doing lots of lateral moves on the floor, on the court, the cut is for you. That's why it's named cut, because for the lateral cuts, because when you're doing lateral cuts, the GT cut is better at that because it's very low to the ground. Plus, the lateral support of the GT cut is really nice. Like I said in my performance review of the cuts, this lateral piece, this TPU piece here, really contains your foot on the footbed, and it really is very supportive laterally. And even the swoosh helps out in the lateral support of the sneaker. So if you're doing lots of lateral cut, the GT cut is for you. While as for the lateral support of the runs, don't worry. Even though this is kind of higher off the ground compared to the cuts, it's still very stable because of the lateral support that you'll be getting out of the React foam. It goes up. This mountains acts as lateral support when you're doing lateral cuts. Plus this lateral outrigger that gives you stability around the forefoot part of the sneaker. So even though this is a very narrow sneaker, the lateral support helps a lot in the stability. So let's see which one is wider around the forefoot. The GT runs is wider by a bit because of the lateral outrigger, while at the back or the heel part of the sneaker, let's compare the width. The width on the heel is almost the same. And as for the weight of the sneaker, the GT cut weighs 478, while the runs is 400 grams. So like I said, The GT Runs is a lot lighter compared to the Cut. It's really made to be light. So it is like wearing your running sneakers on a basketball floor. While on the weight of the Cut, it's pretty on the average side. It doesn't feel heavy and the fit is really nice on the Cuts. Just get the right size. You won't even feel the weight of the Cuts. Another thing that I forgot to mention is for outdoor use. I think the Cuts will be a lot better for outdoors because it has thicker rubber patterns compared to the Runs. I think the Run will be also good in outdoors but not as good as the ones on the Cut because the rubber material on the Runs is also hard. As for the sizing of both sneakers, true to size if you're a regular footer and wide footer, go half a size up. As for the price of this two sneaker, the GT Cut is $8,600 while the Runs is $9,600. So this is $20 more expensive or 1,000 pesos more expensive compared to the Cuts. So that's it on my comparison between the GT Cut and the GT Run. Let me know which sneaker you like better and why. Hit me a comment down below. So this has been MARKCHES. Once again, thank you for dropping by. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.